Costessy, spelt Costessey, but it's never said Costessy, is about half a dozen miles or so from Norwich in Norfolk. No one really knows how this rather strange name came into being. Could be from a person called Cost, or from an old English word for clean or open. It is set in flattish agricultural land, and that's about as far as I can take you, because as yet I haven't travelled around much, except to come to Bob Green, whom everybody seems to know. He lives at Bridge Farm on the Norwich Road. Now, I'd welcome it if you gave me a few pointers, Mr. Green, like size and population and antiquity, industries or families and so on, so that listeners can get a picture of how life is lived here. Is it an old place, as the name suggests? Was it a hamlet? Was it a religious foundation, or what?
Yes, it is an old parish. It dates from somewhere from the 16th century. It's a somewhat scattered parish of about 8,000 to 9,000 inhabitants. Going back to the 16th century, when the Jerninghams were the governing body of the parish, they were the leaders of the Catholic community in Costessy at that time.
They had a big estate, did they?
They did indeed, quite a large estate, which of course was ultimately sold up on the death of Lord Stafford in 1918.
So the family became the Staffords. I presume they had estates elsewhere as well as Jerningham here in
I believe
Costessy.
they did, yes.
Yes.
I believe they did.
So was there, I suppose, a considerable amount of wealth in this family if they dominated the neighbourhood?
Yes. Although towards the end of the period I am informed that Lord Stafford, that is the gentleman who tried to make diamonds from coal.
Pretty risky procedure.
It certainly was.
How not to maintain an estate, in other words.
Indeed, and needless to say, he had very little success. I think that ruined him.
Was there a big manor house?
There's a very large hall, which was built by Sir Henry Jerningham. Unfortunately, now it's in complete ruin.
Now, as I get the picture, it was a very old place, but then on the other hand, I've heard people talk when I was asking the way to you about, do you want old or new Costessy? What's the new part of it? Presumably the old is the cottages and what remained of the hall. But,
that's right. Now, new Costessy came into being in the 1920s.
Was this as a result of this estate being broken up? Did
Yes.
they build on the estate then?
Yes. There was about 400 acres of land. And remarkable thing, you know, at that time in 1921, they were unable to find a bidder at £20 an acre. That's most extraordinary.
Just couldn't sell it, this land
Just couldn't sell it. But ultimately they did. The majority of it was sold to a chappie by the name of Clark. And he in turn sold it off in little plots.
Post-war settlers, really?
Yes, post-war settlers.
Yes.
People from Norwich, eager to own their own properties at that time,
Yes.
bought little plots from this Mr. Clark. A lot of these folk were unable to find the money to build a brick bungalow or house, so they bought a disused railway carriage.
Yes.
Or a fabricated building of some kind.
Yes, a timber building.
Timber building.
Tin shed,
A
something
tin
like
shed, yes,
yes.
even tin sheds.
So it's rather indifferent development with no town and country planning
no
at that time.
town and country planning in
Were
those
there
days.
any industries to help them?
Not at that time. There had, of course, been industry in the old parish, the brickworks. And, of course, there are still houses in Costessy built of Costessy brick. The hall itself was built of Costessy brick.
I see. It came into being really for the rebuilding of Costessy Hall.
Yes.
And the other houses that were built were a sort of spin-off from it.
Yes.
This had gone out of existence by the time these squatters or railway carriage or shed dwellers
Oh,
came?
yes, that had finished.
Yes.
That old brickworks had finished, yes.
Well, I'm going to go my way round and have a look at the place now. What about music in the meantime, please, Mr. Green?
Well, that's very nice, thank you. I think I'd like to have the ink spots, the whispering grass.
Thank you very much.
Why do you whisper green grass? Why tell the trees what ain't so? Whispering grass, the trees don't have to know. No, no. Why tell them all your secrets? who kissed there long ago. Whispering grass, the trees don't need to know. Don't you tell it to the trees, she will tell the birds and bees, and everyone will know, because you told the blabbering trees. Yes, you told them once before. It's no secret anymore. Why tell them all the old things? They're buried under the snow. Whispering grass, don't tell the trees, 'cause the trees don't need to know.
George Jarvis served with the 8th Norfolk Regiment in the First World War. When he was wounded in the forehead, he was smoking his pipe at the time, and only when they were bandaging him did he realize another piece of shrapnel had taken a clean bite at his pipe. And that pipe, the remnant of it, is on the mantelpiece now at his home in Costessy. He runs the Wensum nursery here. But
Yes.
now, when you came out of that First World War, did you settle straight here in Costessy by the goodwill of the business, or did you build it up from scratch?
No, I went home to my father. He'd just bought a farm, and I ran that farm for him for 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
And then I came to Costessy and started this place up from scratch. There was just a meadow when I bought it.
So,
All this ground here was covered with bracken and furze bushes.
so you built up your own greenhouses
Yes,
and constructed them yourself, in fact?
yes.
But you've had a pretty active life. I
Yes.
believe you were very fond of canoeing at one time, weren't you?
Oh, yes.
And then you've done, I know, rifle shooting and various gymnastic pursuits, things of that kind.
Gymnastics, yes.
But I'm told the most extraordinary thing was that you learned flying quite late. After all, you were in the army in the First World War.
Mhm.
You hadn't ever been in the RAF or even in the earlier RFC.
No.
And yet you took up flying late.
Yes.
What sort of age were you when you started?
I was 6 to 1.
Where did you learn?
Well, I bought my own machine, a Tiger Moth. And that was when I learned, actually.
Yeah.
We joined the snoring group, or the Macaulay group, and I learnt with them. There was 2 or 3 instructors. In fact, they used to fly me all the time. Used to fly my machine, and as long as they were flying me, well, they were teaching me all the
Now
time.
you've got how many hours to your credit?
About 650 odd.
650 hours. Did you only do straightforward flying?
No, we used to do all sorts of aerobatics. When I had the Tiger Moth, we were flying aerobatics all the time.
Or tied together and doing loops and goodness knows what all?
Yes,
And spins?
yes. Spinners,
Did you give exhibitions at local airfields then, round about?
Yes.
Yes.
yes, all around Norfolk, and even at the Royal Air Force flying fields at Coleshill and Wethersfield
Yeah.
and Watersham. We once gave a display.
Do you still fly?
Yes,
Yes. But you haven't got your own machine anymore. You have
No,
a,
no,
You
I've-
use a club machine. do you?
we formed a club in 1961, and of course I've flown that machine since.
Here I go rude, asking you how old you are now.
Uh, in about 4 days I shall be 76.
Of many happy returns of
Oh,
those 4
thank
days.
you.
Many happy returns for the future and many, many more flights yet.
Yes,
There's
thank
another
you.
thing I want to talk about, the British Open Skate Championship. I can see the programme lying there, West Highland Open Boat Championship. Now, what was that exactly?
Well, that's a 4-day competition. 2 of those days you fish for just skate alone,
Yeah.
and the other 2 days you can fish for any sort of fish and get a heavy basket.
Yes. So how did you
The
get
heaviest
on?
basket. Well, the fishing actually was poor. There wasn't much being caught. Second day I caught 1 skate, a 32-pound,
Mhm.
and 2 or 3 other fish.
Did that put you in the running?
No, it didn't. Because the heavy one, the one 159 pounds, that's the one that actually won me the
Who
championship.
got that?
I did,
Did you?
yes.
How near to the end?
When I started fishing that time, we just had a half an hour to go. As soon as the bait dropped down, I was grabbed by something, which I didn't know what.
And you managed to get it
Um,
before the end of the competition?
Yes, I got it.
That gave you that particular, the skate championship. Did it give you the overall championship as well?
Yes. It gave me the British Open Skate Championship. It also gave him the West Highland Open Boat Championship.
These are international, are they?
Yes,
So you get entries from where?
all over the continent.
I have to ask you when this was.
Last September.
So here you are, coming up to your 80s, more or less.
Yes.
You've got the heaviest fish in the championship, and you've got 650 hours of flying, and you're still flying.
Yes.
Now, what bit of music would you like after all that, Mr. Jarvis?
Well, I used to do gymnastics. I used to
Yes.
shows
Yes.
occasionally at local fetes. I used to work on the horizontal bar and as a fool, more or less.
Yes.
And I used to get them to put a record on the daring young man on the flying trapeze. Also, I was doing these different stunts.
Well, Tiger Moth or Parallel Bars, this is dedicated to you, the daring young man on the flying trapeze. Thank
Right.
you.
Once I was happy, but now I'm forlorn, like an old coat that is tattered and torn, left on this wide world to fret and to mourn, betrayed by a maid in her teens. Now this girl that I loved, she was handsome. I tried all I knew her to please, but I could not please her 1/4 so well, like the man on the flying trapeze. He'd fly through the air with the greatest of ease, a daring young man on the flying trapeze. His movements were graceful, all girls he could please, and my love he had stolen away. Now this young man by name was Signor Bono Slang, tall, big and handsome, as well made as Chang. Wherever he appeared, the hall loudly rang with ovation from all people there. He'd smile from the bar on the people below, and one night he smiled on my love. She winked back at him, and she shouted, "Bravo!" as he hung by his nose up above. Whoa! He'd fly through the air with the greatest of ease, a daring young man on the flying trapeze. His movements were graceful, all girls he could please, and my love he has stolen away. Some months after this, I went to a hall, with greatly surprised to see there on the wall a bill in red letters which did my heart gall, that she was appearing with him, the rotter. He taught her gymnastics and dressed her in tights to help him to live at his ease. And he made her assume a masculine name, and now she goes on the trapeze. She floats through the air with the greatest of ease. You think her a man on the flying trapeze. She does all the work while he takes his ease, and that's what became of my love.
I got a list of 30 countries which receive exports from Costessy, from a small engineering firm. I think everyone will agree that it's quite an astonishing record in these days to be able to achieve something like that, almost entirely by recommendation, not by hard-selling overseas representatives. Yet, how's it been done and what's the product? Well, we'll ask the men who chalked up that record, two brothers, Stanley and Geoffrey Sargent. First of all, if I talk to you, Stanley, what is the product? I mean, is it one thing or is it a wide range of things? Obviously engineering.
Now, it's a wide range of things. Wood-turning lathes, circular saw units, planers, and now we're on to conveyors and such like for the food industry.
Well, let's continue with you for a moment, Stanley. How did it begin?
Well, we used to work at Lawrence and Scott's, and at the evening time we worked in a small shed behind our bungalow, serving the people around here with circular saw benches and such like. And that gradually got so that we couldn't cater for all the orders, so we had to give up our job and take this on full time.
I'm going back a bit further than that now. You say you worked at Lawrence and Scott. They're an engineering firm in Norwich. Were you apprenticed there?
We were apprenticed there, yes, 5 years apprenticeship, and served right through the factory. And we also went away on jobs for them.
Both of you?
Both of them, yes.
Did you do the same sorts of jobs, you and Geoffrey?
Same sort of jobs in the factory, but when we went away, I was down in the coal mines and on ships, and my brother was at power stations.
Well, coming to you now, Geoffrey, you must have been gluttons for punishment. You worked like this all day long, and yet you came back in the evening and worked in a shed behind your bungalow, doing jobs for local people. That finally took over. Was it so much of a pleasure to you just to do this?
Well, I think it started as a hobby, and we gradually built it up from a hobby, and this is how it all started.
You make more or less individual machines, not a run of continuously the same machine.
Well, the saw units, lathes, and the saw benches, they are a production model, but we also do a lot of stuff like conveyors for the food industry and sand pits and such like. These are one-off machines.
You moved across into the food industry from purely woodworking machinery, in other words.
That's right. It was more of an accident than anything. It just happened.
Somebody wanted one.
That's right. And we quoted and we got this order. And after that, it just snowballed.
What would the conveyor belts convey?
They've conveyed fish fingers, beef burgers. It's also conveyed baby food, mustard, also stones for the gravel pit, peas, and sprouts, beans. I could keep going on for a long while.
Do you design your own machines, have your draftsmen here?
Yes, we have a draftsman and we do our own designing. And in a lot of cases we do them from the customer's drawings, but we also design and manufacture from scratch.
So woodworking, food processing. What else do you do?
We do a lot of repair work for the farmers. They always come in round about harvest time because they, like everybody else, they always leave it till the last minute. And one of the biggest firms we work for at the moment is for British Railways. We've been doing a lot of work for them for all over the eastern region.
Because they run down their own workshops, I
Yes,
suppose.
they have, unfortunately.
So
yes.
they need to job out like
Yes,
this.
yes, this is it, yes.
When I look at this list of 30 countries, Stanley, that you're sending to, do you use a shipper or do you do your own work on this too?
We do all our own work. We've a good staff with us and quite capable of doing it all within our own firm.
So you crate them and do all the documentation and so on?
Everything, yes, everything is done in our own place here.
Your girl in the office must be worth her weight in woodworking machines.
She certainly is.
Can you get good staff actually here? I mean, a small country village like this, which is all it amounts to, I know you've got Norwich on your doorstep, but can you in turn get apprentices who will undertake the work like you used to all those years ago?
We have no bother in getting anybody to work here. In fact, we've a waiting list of people who would like to come here.
Now, what about music? You're going to choose the piece of music, aren't you, Geoffrey?
Well, I'd like a piece of music I'm very fond of. It's from Paint Your Wagon.
Yes.
It's A Million Miles Away Behind the Door, sung by Gene Seberg.
Thanks very much indeed.
Send back the world. There's too much night for me. The sky is much too high to shelter me when darkness falls. For cabin walls would be just right for me. I need a threshold I can cross where I can sit and gather moss forevermore. A million miles away behind the door. Roll up the flames. There's too much view for me. There's so much space between the waiting heart and whispered word. It's never heard. One room will do for me, where every evening I can stare at someone smiling from his chair across the floor. A million miles away behind the door.
You might be fooled into thinking that you're standing in the middle of a field if you suddenly heard some bird song like this. Absolutely marvellous. Thrush, a blackbird and a nightingale, but in fact, it's the talent of Brian Chamberlain in the living room of his house at 18 Myrtle Avenue in Costessy. Brian, those imitations are really splendid. Where did you pick all of them up?
Thank you, Mr. Engelman. Well, actually, after leaving the Royal Navy, I was in the Royal Navy from 42 to 46, my brother and I decided to work on the land. We were going to become farmers, but it fell through. And then I went into British Railways for several years, you know, and then we finished up as I am now, performing for a living, you see.
But where did you learn it all? I mean, all right, you imitate birds and so on, but you're performing for a living. Was it running in the family at all?
Actually, my father, he still is a ventriloquist. He's semi-retired now, and he's been performing for several years. And I sort of copied most of the things from him in the first place.
He began you, so to speak.
Yes, my tutor.
Did you
Yes.
take over some of the voices from him? Learn how to produce them?
Yes, I watched him very carefully with one of his dolls called Joey, and I tried to incorporate this in one of my puppets, yes. Yeah.
How many in family have you of your puppets?
Puppets, I think there are 7 or 8 altogether. And the latest thing is a talking broom. Thought I'd go into some domestic subjects, you know.
What does the broom say?
Hello, what are you going to say then, Herbert?
I don't like sweeping floors very much.
Oh, you don't like sweeping floors? No, he doesn't. Bye-bye then.
Cheerio.
Cheerio.
Do any of your subjects sing?
Yes, Rodney the Dragon is a very good singer. He sings a bit of opera and stuff like that.
Not rocked in the
Italian.
cradle of the deek.
No. He sings Neapolitan stuff, actually. Yeah.
Where do you do most of these? For children's parties, Christmas time and so on?
Yes, children's parties, old folks' parties in village halls, and we're now beginning the clubs and things as well. Yes.
Do you tend to use the clubs for adult work and therefore using more of the adult stories and so on?
Yes, I find the clubs, they consist mostly of adult people. Sometimes they bring 1 or 2 children in, so we always bring along the rabbit puppet or something.
You've had to change the act a certain amount, have you?
Yes, yes, it varies quite a bit. We have adult puppets and children's puppets.
Was it hard to break in?
Not really. After building it up over so many years, I found that the ventriloquial side of my show became very popular, developing into quite a big demand for it.
You use both, do you? You use the bird song in the act as well as the ventriloquial
Yes,
stuff?
bird song, ventriloquism, a little piano music, character studies of people like Chaplin, Ken Dodd, and on the buses characters and things like that.
Yes, I saw a brochure of yours with some
Yeah.
very good facial imitations as well as voice imitations.
Thank you, Mr. Egerman. Thank you very
Well,
much.
well, they were very well done indeed.
Yeah, thank
But do you do any of the local Norfolk accent?
Yes, sometimes I present my farmyard turns dressed up as a country yokel with a Norfolk accent.
It's very
yeah.
difficult to imitate, isn't it?
Yes, yes, it is difficult to imitate. They have their unique ways of speaking, such as, "Where you now going to go, boy?" You know, this
Oh,
sort of
that
thing,
singing
you know.
postman style thing.
Yes,
isn't
the
it?
singing postman, yes,
That's right.
yeah. Hey, you got a light? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I suppose you hear a lot of those on your daily round even. don't
Yes,
you?
I heard a mother telling her son yesterday when it was raining. She says, "Come you on in or out on it, boy. That's a raining now, look." That's a, you know,
That's the real
it's a
thing,
lovely
isn't
dialect,
it?
yes, yes.
But impossible, as you say, to imitate unless you're born and bred in it, I
Yes,
suppose.
indeed, yes. It's very difficult.
Right, well now, what bit of music would you like us to play for you?
Well, Mr. Engelman, if it's possible, I did a television show with him, Neil Reed, but he's such a wonderful boy to know. He really is a great chappie, and I'd love to hear his one that's in the charts, Mother of Mine, please.
Thank you.
Sweet mother of mine.
The Royal Norfolk Show, nominally staged at Norwich, in inverted commas, is in fact held at Costessy, this time New Costessy on the Dereham Road. Hitherto we've been carrying on all our conversations in Old Costessy. I've been studying a map of the showground and also some aerial photographs of the show when it was in progress last year. I'm in the office of the Secretary Brown Shelley. Mr. Shelley, one reads with despondent reports from agricultural shows of fading interests and falling attendances. What's been your experience?
Here in Norfolk, we've been extremely lucky to have a very loyal county, and apart from some fall off in trade stands over the last few years, our attendance and general levels of support have remained very high.
What sort of figures?
Well, our trade stands run at about an average of 350. We have about 750 horses, about 400 cattle, 300 sheep and pigs, 100 goats, 1,000 small livestock, and our average visitor attendance is in the region of 80,000.
Spread over how long, a week?
2 days.
That's pretty good, isn't it? You mentioned that specifically, Norfolk being a loyal county. This probably accounts for half the attendance, does it? The fact that they support a local show of this kind?
It's very difficult to know what the breakdown of the attendance is. I would imagine that the greater part of it is Norfolk people, but we of course draw attendance from all the surrounding counties.
And indeed, Norfolk is also a holiday county with a very lovely coastline, so I suppose a certain amount of this rubs off, does it, with the visitors?
True, but the show's held in the last week of June, and this rather prevents a large number of holiday attendants from the Broads area. No doubt we get some.
But of course, later would mean that the traffic was building up, which could be a problem. It's a problem enough already with 80,000 in 2 days.
We have something like 50,000 vehicle movements a day to cope with, and it would probably be impossible to hold this on a Saturday with holiday season traffic.
You hold it when, then?
On a Wednesday and Thursday.
Why particularly, apart from this traffic angle?
Well, this is partly a matter of tradition. A few years ago, we looked carefully into the question of which days of the week were most suited to the show. And of course, we are an agricultural show and consulted with various branches of the industry which are concerned in the show. And after a fairly intense study, we found that the balance lay towards the traditional midweek show rather than a Friday or Saturday. Indeed, there was some evidence that we would have lost support had we changed.
What determines your choice of date anyway? I suppose you have all sorts of factors, too numerous to mention, do you?
Yes, we are, of course, part of the national annual calendar, and within that calendar there is not very much room to maneuver. Even within the show world alone, there is a major show in every week in the summer months.
Yes, so in order to get your exhibitors, you've got to think of things like hotel accommodation, the very factor we spoke of policing from the point of view of traffic, and tying in with all the other shows. All this sort of thing must be considered, I suppose.
Our traditional dates have always been in the last week of June, in the week before the Royal Show at Stoneleigh.
Do you have any concessions to popularity in the shape of an entertainment of any kind?
Well, the show consists of trade stands, which is the trade aspect of the show, educational exhibitions, the livestock section, dog show, flower show, forestry, and lastly, but by no means least, the Grand Ring, which provides 2 full days, commencing at 9 o'clock in the morning and running through till 7:30 at night, of display and entertainment events.
What are you scheduling for this summer?
The major event in 1972 will be a jousting tournament staged by the British Jousting Society. This is a tournament which is based on the 12th century jousting. It should provide a very attractive and interesting event.
What about some music now? Will you choose something for our program, please, Mr. Shelley?
Well, in addition to the British Jousting Society's tournament, which we shall be staging this year, we shall have display events from the Royal Marines, and perhaps it would be appropriate if I ask you to play some of the music by one of the Royal Marine bands.
Thank you very much. We've come to Costessy Secondary Modern School in Richmond Road, a school with something like 600 pupils, I believe, shortly to be 700, split roughly 50-50 boys and girls. The headmaster is Mr. Reeve and his senior master is Mr. Betts, in whose room we are now. But we're talking, in fact, to Mr. Douglas Brown, who is the boys' gymnastic instructor, the point being that the gym is quite exceptionally equipped. By what yardstick can we compare that gym, Mr. Brown, compared with other schools, for example?
Well, in most schools, the normal equipment supplied is called Swedish equipment, and this does not include the competitive apparatus like parallel bars, horizontal bar, pommelled horse, such as is used in the Olympic Games. And that is a type of equipment that we have in this particular school.
Quite a big outlay, and you've achieved this over how many years since you started?
I came to the school in 1958, to be precise, and it's taken me ever since then to get the gym up to the standard it is at present for as far as equipment's concerned.
Have the boys rewarded you accordingly with their success?
I have no grumbles at all in that respect. The boys have been first class ever since I came here and supported me up to the hilt.
One of the terrible things about school teaching in any branch, in any field of education, is that they tend to grow up. In other words, you have a very promising boy, the promise is fulfilled, and then he's 15 and on he goes. Do the boys come back afterwards? Do they have the facility to practice, say, in the evening, when they've left?
Well, we realised this was going to be a problem when we established the gym club, inasmuch that lads do want to continue, and for that reason the head and the governors have given us permission to use the gym on 3 evenings a week, so that boys who have left school can in fact continue to do their training as before.
So having spent all the time with them, you don't lose them entirely?
We lose some of them, of course.
Yes.
Well, that's inevitable. They go away from this part of the world.
Yeah. But now, from the point of view of the outside world, do you compete elsewhere?
We compete as often and in as many competitions as we possibly can.
But this is largely an agricultural area. Money isn't all that free. How do you manage to get the costs for travelling? This isn't an education grant or anything, is it?
No, I'm afraid there's no help really possible for this type of thing, so we have a parents committee which supports us by organising fundraising events such as jumble sales, cheese and wine parties and so forth, to back the efforts of the boys up gymnastically and allow them to compete as far away as they have to go.
Which is where?
Well, I'm taking one boy this weekend to Leeds. Last weekend we were in London. The weekend before that we were in Harlow. 3 weeks' time we're in Billingham, County Durham. And then March the 4th we have to take a whole batch of them to Northampton for the champion school competition.
What about abroad? Have you ventured abroad with them at all?
Yes, we have in fact. We've had 5 trips abroad. One to Holland, one to Belgium, and the rest to the international youth festivals run a little place called Bierstadt near Frankfurt in West Germany.
How did you get on?
Well, on the first occasion in Ostend, we were not very good. We were placed 15th out of 15 teams competing. And we progressed slowly until in 1967 we were very fortunate and won the title of Victor Ludorum at the youth festival there. In fact, Dr. Kiesinger, who was then Federal German Chancellor, presented us with a plaque.
Out of how many that time? You were bottom 15 out of 15 once. When you were first, out of how many?
There were, in fact, 29 teams competing from about 14 different countries.
Well, that gives a measure of the ability of the boys then. That's really tremendous. When you came first out of that great number of teams, you must have had some star performers. Are these the ones that please you most, or do you like the humdrum chaps who try and don't do very well?
I like, of course, to have the star performers, and nobody would deny this.
But that's almost a natural rhythm, isn't it? They just need guidance. They've got it in
That
from
is
the
so,
beginning.
yes. They are perfect in themselves. The people who I really admire are the stickers, the boys who take 18 months, say, to learn a handspring. Determination not to be beaten.
Well, I'm sure it's immensely satisfying to have this sort of job. At the same time, it must be awfully good for the lads to have you as an instructor. Now, what about music, please?
Well, when we competed in Germany, we chose as our background music a piece called Liquidator by Harry J. and the All-Stars. We have this piece of music to work to as a display team, and it's very popular with boys and parents and everyone.
Thank you. That Jerningham family, whose turns of fortune and whose steadfast faith influenced Costessy so much, intrigued me. It seems they were called Jernigan at one time, which doesn't sound Norman at all, more Saxon, so perhaps they came across the North Sea to settle here in what was then a remote hamlet. Anyway, I shall probably never know. Next week we're off to Spenborough in Yorkshire, so until then, it's goodbye from the Down Your Way team.